Guys, my name is Victor Deppy. I am based out of Maryland, just a little bit down south from you, but I promise you it is still very cold at home. So I can relate to all the northerners here about trying to catch really big green bass and being a little frustrated when they only seem to get about 6 pounds. But I can tell you that there's a lot of green bass around here that are going to be upwards of 8, 9, and I've even seen and heard of some 10s up here too. So today we're going to talk about how do we target these trophy northern strain bass primarily using swim baits. There's a lot of ways to catch big bass, but swim baits have been my most effective way to do it. Last year I caught a 9-pound, 2-ounce largemouth in Pennsylvania, of all places, on a 7-inch glide bait that I make as well. So we're going to get into it. We're going to start with a little basic swim demonstration, and hopefully these fish just kind of go nuts for this thing. So we'll start off with that. I'm going to do like my favorite retrieve to use a glide bait with to catch a real big fish in like the pre-spawn. So it's not going to be quite as slow and lazy as you're expecting, and you'll see why if these fish cooperate. I'm hoping they do. We'll let it get down. He's already looking. So I'm going to let my bait sink and get level, and then I'm going to start swimming slow. And then when I see them on the scope and they're following it, I might give them a little twitch. And I want to do that heart reaction and get them all fired up and start competing with each other and getting them crazy. So coming into the pre-spawn, the first stage of that is going to be ice out. And this year is very cold. We're going to have a hard ice out for the first time in a while in Maryland. And I'm not sure how often you guys get ice, but I'm sure it's pretty often. I always look for an ice out, dead weeds and sunny wood. Dead weeds is going to be where a lot of the life is going to be coming into, you know, that winter ice fishing time of year. And that wood on the bank is going to be where a lot of them fish are going to be sunning themselves. A big thing that happens in the pre-spawn with the real big bass, around the moons, around the first full moon on a warming trend, when that water is going from 40, 45 to 50 degrees, those big fish are going to pull up shallow and start scoping out their spawning grounds. That is when they're the most vulnerable for us to catch. They're dumb, they haven't seen a bait all winter, and they are looking to eat something that's going to fill them up, and that's going to be a big perch, a big golden shiner, maybe a bluegill, a big crappie. So we're going to try and find the warmest water in the pond or the warmest water in the lake. How do we do that? Look at the north end of the lake if there's any kind of inflow, creeks that are coming into the lake, rivers that are coming into the lake, the sunniest side of the pond. Try and scope out your favorite places to fish coming in, you know, a month from now when the ice is starting to thaw, and see, okay, that end of the pond, that end of the lake has got open water right now while everything's frozen. That's going to be your warmest water. We're going to try and fish water temperature for the first 3 or 4 weeks of the pre-spawn. We're going to only fish in either the warmest water in the lake, the sunniest water in the lake, or the best cover or structure in the lake. Cover and structure in the lake is going to be the only time that I am ever going to stray away from the warmest water in the lake in the pre-spawn. That means if there's a very, very good rock pile, a very, very good weed bed, a very good tree that gets some sunlight in the evening, or a brush pile. Brush piles are going to be a real big pooler of giant fish any time of year, but especially in the pre-spawn. And if you can find some of that prime structure in staging areas, meaning in an area where the lake transitions from deep to shallow, somewhere they can move from their winter holding ground or their favorite rock pile that they live on, and then go spawn in a few weeks, that's going to be your prime areas. Catching big fish is real easy. It's just, you got to be there at the right time. Catching big fish is all about timing, and it's all about fishing the high percentage stuff with the high percentage baits. You don't want to spend a lot of time messing around on your B stuff, especially not when it's A time. So if you got areas, ponds, lakes that you're like, I fished there, I haven't never heard anyone catching an 8-pounder there. You probably shouldn't go there and try to catch an 8-pounder. A big mistake I made for a long time was there are places I like to fish, and I just thought, man, I'm going to end up catching a really big one out of this place, even though nobody has. And I would put in a lot of time, I would do everything right, and I would try my dangest to catch a big one out of those places, and it just never happened. I'd always cap off at that 6 or 7 pound range. I would never get to that 8 or 9 pounder. And then I made a mental decision that from there on out, I was only going to put my time, which is my most valuable fishing lure in my entire tackle box, into the places that actually grow big bass. And that means if you've never heard of someone catching a 7 or 8 pounder out of someplace, and a lot of people fish there, I promise you there's probably not that many of them in there, or maybe there's not even one at all. But if you start fishing places that historically grow big fish, your chances of catching one are going to go from here to here. I mean, it's a tremendous difference. And to give you an example, if you're willing to travel, say there's nowhere near you within 30, 40 minutes to catch a big bass, at least that you haven't heard of. It's better to drive 1 or 2 hours to an area or a pond or a lake that has big fish on the right time of year than it is to drive 30 minutes to your lake, spend part of the day driving and most of the day fishing. Or you could spend a chunk of your day driving and less time fishing, but you're going to be fishing around a lot bigger fish. When I caught the 9.2, I drove 3 hours to the lake I caught the fish out of, and I caught it on the second time I had ever fished that lake. And then the rest of that season, we proceeded to catch tons of 7 and 8 pounders out of there for the following 2 or 3 weeks. And to do that, you want to do a couple things, and that's going to bring into stage 2 of my plan to catch a big bass. And that is, how do I pick my timing? It's all about timing. How do I pick my timing when planning my fishing day? And how do I pick my timing when I'm actually doing my fishing day? So I'm going to look at the calendar, and I'm going to look at the moon phases, the time of year, and the weather trends. If it's getting close to spawn, which is my favorite time to pop a big fish on a glide bait, I'm going to go and plan a trip around my best lake right before the full moon. If you can combine that timing with a warming trend, you're putting your chances back up in this area. So look at the calendar, see, okay, maybe I don't want to drive out to that lake this weekend or next weekend, but man, at the end of April, there's going to be a full moon that's going to land on that, and everything should be perfect. It's all right, you can afford to wait. You can afford to wait to make a trip somewhere, because it's all about putting in the time at the right time. You don't need to go grind it out at a good lake to catch a big fish. You just need to be there at the best time of year on the best day of the year and try and catch that fish. The other thing I would think about when I'm trying to catch a really big bass is, how am I going to present my baits to that fish throughout the day? I'm going to try and fish from the start of the day to the end of the day, so I get the most in tune with the environment. That's kind of the goal. You got to get in the flow. You got to feel when these big fish are moving. You got to get a sense for it. We're not going fishing, we're going hunting. So we want to go hunt these things down. We want to try and figure out what they're feeling. Oh man, okay, it's a little windy. This area is pretty cold. I'm going to go to that protected pocket. It's got some sunshine on it. You get in there, you notice a couple things. You're hearing birds chirping, or maybe there's a little flower or green, grass spout, on the bank. A lot of life. You want to get around that life and that nice water, and you say, oh man, this is going to be good, but it's a little pocket at 9 o'clock, and right now it looks good, it feels good, there's nothing here. Come back to that pocket at 2 or noon or 3 o'clock and give it another try. If something feels good, if it's a really good looking area, it's important to continue trying that area multiple times throughout the day. A lot of spots like trees and wood and rock piles and things, the types of structure spots that fish like to live on, they will be there, not have any interest in eating your bait, and then change their mood, change their attitude, and you can make the same exact cast and get them to eat it just even 30 or 40 minutes later. Now, another thing I'd say is, how many of you are fishing with live scope? Okay, I'll do a quick little comment on that. If you're fishing your bait on live scope, a glide bait in particular, the reaction that we're looking for to indicate that that fish is going to eat your bait the way that you presented it, but he didn't, is when your bait is here and the fish is here and he flies up to the bait and then he scoots off at the last second. And you're thinking, dang, what did I do wrong? In my experience, I don't think you've done anything wrong, and that fish just wasn't quite ready to eat. But that's a fish you need to come back to an hour later. And that's going to be the difference between catching a really big one and not. My friend Caden caught a 10-pound, 12-ounce bass in Virginia 10 days ago on my 9-inch taxi shad that I make here. He was using a shad pattern one, not this bone one, but a 10-12 on this bait. Caught it out of a tree. It was his 4th time fishing that tree that day, and his 1st time being on that lake. So a lot of guys are going to come to a tree, have a fish come out of it, not get bit, and they're going to just keep exploring the lake and keep, messing around and fishing. But Caden had that mindset that day of catching a real big bass, and he located those big bass, and he said, man, if I just keep coming back to this spot, not coming back tomorrow, not coming back the next day, but I keep coming back today, over and over and over again, eventually one of those fish is going to make a mistake. And a lot of times it's not even that they make a mistake, it's just that something happens.
Oh, you do.
A lot of the fish that you're catching, you're thinking that, oh, I just got bit, and then I missed him, and then I got bit again, and I caught that fish again. He bit it twice. A lot of times it's multiple fish that are following your bait, and one is coming from the bottom, coming up to steal it from you. The next thing is, what water column do I need to fish in with all my timing? Got all my timing lined up. Where in the water column do I need to fish? That's a real important deal. If it is the morning, fish are inactive, they're buried in the weeds, they're buried in a brush pile or a rock pile, and you've made your presentations with the glide bait, you've made your presentations with a wake bait, you haven't had any success, that's when you need to try to go to the bottom. Going to the bottom with something that's not a jig, not a Ned rig, not a plastic worm, but a full profile soft plastic swim bait. This one right here is made by Real Prey Swim Baits. It's his 5-inch bluegill. This is a great size to get involved with for anybody. It's got a nice paddle tail on there, so it's going to swim just like a Kitech would or any kind of boot tail swim bait would. And you can fish this bait as a bottom presentation, as a mid-water presentation. This is a good option to use when the fish don't seem like they want to come up. So a typical retrieve for me on a bait like this is going to be sinking it out, letting it hit the bottom, and I might just roll it slow and just let it do its thing and pop it a little bit. Let the tail tick. Or I might lift and pause this bait a lot. I'm gonna let it get to the bottom. And then this is a good way to get fish to react, is have it on the bottom and just get their interest in it, and then just pop it off the bottom and then let it fall. Almost like you're stroking a jig. You got them looking at it and then just pop it away from them. I can't see if they're down there biting it, but there you go. So it's almost like you're fishing a jig, but you're using a big soft swim bait. This one, he was into it. The other thing you can do with a swim bait, a big swim bait, is cover a lot of water with it. You can throw it out there and you can fish it like this. This seems fast, and these guys in the tank might not be. That one wanted it. But that speed, as you just saw, can be a great way to get a reaction. Yeah, they're getting a little tired of it. That's okay. I love to cover water with a bait like this, or a mag draft or whatever, and just roll it at speed and let that tail kick real hard. When you do that, the idea is to not focus so much on where you're throwing it, but how fast you're throwing it. Well, that sounds contradictory. You want to throw it in the right place, but you want to cover water. And when you are covering water with speed, you might want to make multiple casts to a a spot. You make multiple casts to a laydown or a dock. Hit it from different angles. Try different approaches, and see what you can make happen. Another bait that is extremely effective at catching big fish around here is a rat. Okay, a rat or any kind of wake bait, in this state in particular, is super good at catching giants. If you're one of the people in the audience that you're not fishing the real big lakes and you're fishing more of these bog ponds and these cranberry ponds and these little just side of the road deals, there's a lot of big fish in those. They have a nice basin bottom to them. They're filled with grass. They got tons of bluegills. They got tons of perch and things like this crawling around at night. But they also got a lot of times, especially the good ones, is a lot of fishing pressure. And one of the good ways to get away from that fishing pressure is fishing at night. There's not as many people fishing at night as there are during the daytime, and a lot of those big bass are going to be active at night willing to feed. We can use a bait like a rat that's a wake bait. This is a topwater lure to catch those fish at night. Especially in some of these ponds where the max depth is only 6 foot, you can catch them on topwater even when the water is very cold at night. You can catch them in topwater as early as March some years here. Matter of fact, we did one of the first little swim bait shows in Massachusetts probably 6 years ago or 5 years ago, and it was one of the warmer years, and I was swimming a rat just like this as a demonstration to a customer in the pond outside the venue, and a fish came up and ate that bait off the surface during my demonstration. And it was probably about a 4-pound fish in the first or second week of March. The topwater bite that happens early here is special to this area. It's not common across the country. I'm not sure how well we'll be able to see this rat. Seth, can you see that in the tank?
Yeah.
Okay? Okay. So the key to fishing a rat is all about speed. And this rat is really good at going really slow. And it's just up there. See them all down there looking at it. They're like, what in the world is that? But I want to eat it because it's struggling on the surface. And when things are on the surface, they got nowhere they can go. And the bass know that. The bass love to pin stuff on the surface just like they love to pin stuff on the bottom. The surface is the bottom of the surface. So, I mean, look at these guys. They haven't seen anything like this all day. They're like, what is going on? Even these little dudes, even these little 10, 12 inches, maybe pounders, we could use these guys for bait. I think some of these fish might be the size of this glide bait I got right here. I don't know. But even they can't help but be interested in a big rat wake bait. So I said that rat's all about speed. You must be thinking, well, why'd you just go so slow? Well, because slow, in the instance of fishing a rat, is going to get you fast action. At nighttime, especially early season, it looks like it's furry. So you'll notice how these little jets we got in here, they're pushing this bait all around this tank. Same thing's going to happen at night when we're fishing this rat on the surface and we got a little bit of wind. Going to be a little bit of ripples, and you can see, I mean, I barely move, I'm not even touching it. This bait's just moving around in the current of this tank, and these guys, you can see, is holding their interest because it's sitting on the surface. It's got those little legs on there that are moving around. It's got the tail on there that's moving around. When you fish at night, when the water is really cold, you want to let that pause, let that dead stick be your weapon, and you want to keep that thing sitting out there and just give it an occasional twitch to bring it back to life. That's a really, really, really good way to catch giants, because you can have a giant bass looking at that bait for 2 minutes long before he decides to bite it. And when they're doing this, that bite is going to be very subtle. So you need to pay attention. You need to try and fish this bait on braided line at night. You want to have as much feel as possible when you're dead sticking, because a lot of these giants are going to barely bite that thing. They're going to slurp it. We call it a slurp bite. And you need to be able to detect that bite and put them in the boat. Coming into the warmer temperatures of the spring and early summer is when the action starts to change, and we start to fish this at more of a pace like that. If you can see it up here, what this bait is doing is it's pushing a really hard wake, and if you could hear it, it's doing this. Oh, well, hang on. But it's just, I don't know if you can hear it, but it's clanking. It's making a knocking sound. It's going knock, 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 knock. And that knocking sound is going to call fish out of grass. That's why these rats work so good up here in Massachusetts in these ponds. And I'm going to fish it not slow, not super fast, but steady moderate is what I like to do. I like to fish a big rat the same speed and the same pace that I like to fish a buzzbait or a whopper plopper. And I don't hear a lot of people talking about that as far as your speed goes, because there's so much emphasis on fishing a rat very slowly that people don't talk about fishing them faster. Some of the most exciting, fun fishing you'll have is June to July, post-spawn, fishing a rat the same way you'd go fish a black buzzbait at night. You think they hit a buzzbait hard, wait till they try to rip an 8-inch rat out of your hands. It is just absolutely unbelievable. There is one other niche way you can fish a rat. I'm not sure if I'll be able to show you with this bait, but you can also crank rats down and fish them subsurface. And it looks like a mink or anything like that running through. And you can see, look at You wouldn't, oh yeah, you wouldn't think that they would eat that like that, but that tail's moving, this thing's moving water in a way when it's being cranked down that I'm sure bass around here have probably never really felt before. It's a super wide, hard wobbling crankbait. And it gets a lot of big bites, and it's a very sneaky way to fish around that people are probably not going to be too happy that I talked about. So we've covered top, we've covered bottom. I'll talk about the in-between. That's coming back to the glide. When those fish are pre-spawn and they're in the surface of the water, they're in the surface of the water for two reasons. They're trying to gestize their eggs. It helps with their egg development. It's actually a biological reason that those bass need to go shallow. All these big bass are going to be forced to go shallow. They need sunlight on their backs. They need UV rays on their scales. They need to be in a certain level of neutral buoyancy in shallow water to gestate the eggs, and it's the last stage of development before they spawn. So right in that window is when you're going to catch the suspension fish. And that's going to be the fish that are sitting 2 foot under the surface. We call them high floaters. So those high floaters, they're catchable on a rat and they're catchable on a glide bait. They're not really catchable on anything else. A lot of guys are going to be fishing under their fish this year. A lot of guys are going to be throwing chatterbaits, they're going to be throwing jigs, they're going to be throwing Texas rigs, and they're going to be fishing underneath to where the big fish actually are. When you're doing that, my best advice to you is to fish the glide bait where you can just barely see it. That's usually the magic spot in any type of water is going to be, I can just barely see my bait anymore. If that water is super clear, that means that there's 6 foot of visibility, that means that those floaters are probably going to be about 6.5 foot deep, because they don't want to be up high enough where that light is penetrating that you can see them a lot of times. Not the real big ones. They didn't get big for being dumb and get eaten by hawks and eagles when they were this big. So that means if you're in dirty water or stained water and you're using a bait that's a bone color like this, and you can sink it down a little bit and you can only see it at about 16 inches under the surface, I'm going to fish it 16 inches under the surface, even if the water's cold, if that's the type of fish I'm trying to target. If I'm trying to target a fish that's suspending for pre-spawn, that's what I'm doing. They're going to be in the warmer water and they're going to be in the sunshine. They love, love, love the sunshine. They are like lizards on a rock to a lay-down log. I'm telling you, it's unbelievable. When they're on those logs in the water, the real big ones are going to get so tight to them that even on a trained eye on live scope, you can barely see them. They're going to be right up against the log. A lot of times we catch them like this under the log where the top of their tail is rubbed off. They don't even have a top of the tail anymore. That's a good indicator to me as a fisherman that they're laying up under stuff. They want to be on this log for protection because it's up so high in the water column. They don't want things seeing them. They want to hide, but they want to be warm. And they want to sit up under that log. That log's soaking up heat. It's a radiant object in the water. And they're going to get really close to it. If a log's sitting like this, that fish will even turn his body and sit at an angle on that log. If you ever go to a Bass Pro Shops and they got a brush pile in there, sometimes you can see some of those fish will, get a little bit nose down and sit all funky like, because they want to have their body up against something. They're in a bit of like a resting state. When they're in like a resting state like that, they're using their lateral line to be aware of what's going on, while their eyes are just kind of taking a break. It's like they shut their brain off. It's a weird phenomenon that we've noticed where that fish is very rarely going to bite on the first cast. Well, I should say, very rarely going to bite on the third cast, because a lot of times he's either going to bite it on the first cast or it's going to be the 15th cast. And a big thing for me to catch these giant fish on wood, which is honestly where I live, where I catch probably 80% of my fish over 7 pounds is on wood in the spring, is I'm going to make as many casts it takes to a piece of cover that makes sense to me to get that fish to move or to eat. If it's one single log, if it's one pole, one trunk that's coming into the water, I'm going to try and hit that 5 times. I want to hit it this way, I want to hit it that way, I want to hit it this way a little bit deeper, I want to hit it that way a little bit deeper, and then I'll be passing by and I'll be like, I can't resist, and I'll throw it, maybe on the back side of it or something. But if it's a big tree that's the size of this whole tank, we've made 25, 30 casts to a tree before and then pull the 7-pounder out of it. There's so much going on inside of those trees. There's so many branches, so many places that they could be sitting, that a lot of times if you're not throwing your bait through there, they just don't feel it, or they don't see it. So you got to bring it to them a way they can see it. I also think that when a real big bass is in a tree for a long time, he's just comfortable with everything that's in there. You'll see him living in a tree that has a bunch of white and black crappie in it, and they're just coexisting. They cohabitate. And you got to bring your glide bait or your fishing lure through that tree multiple times. And I really think that they see it each cast, and they're just going, dang, that fine fish is coming through here again. I can't believe he's swimming through here again. And then you make another cast, and he's going, man, he looks tasty. I can't believe he's swimming all broken like that through my kitchen again. And then you do it a third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th time, and on the 11th time, you come through there, and at this point he's like, I'm getting pissed off at this thing. He needs to get out of my house. And he can't be swimming through my brush pile all broken like that. And they'll just fly up and kill him. So I think there is something to that, remaining undetected by the fish, being careful with your cast, not making any bad casts, and making multiple